Well, it's so fun to be excited about learning something. And I think the two of you bring that energy every time you have a guest. And you're always like, oh, I got to be mindful of the time. And oh, I've got 1,000 other questions to ask because there's just so much excitement. And it's honestly is like the best environment to learn from.
Hello and welcome. We're so glad you're tuning into the Taking Good Care show. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, based in Toronto, Canada.
And I'm Dr. David St. Arnaud, based in Edmonton, Canada. We're two practicing psychologists with over a decade of experience each, working in a variety of settings and supporting diverse populations.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. While we're both practicing psychologists, our podcast is intended purely for educational and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional mental health care or treatment. If you're in need of support, we strongly encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health professional in your area.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Here we are again, Friday morning. Really looking forward to today. It's been a lot of fun. And even before we started recording, I was telling everyone on this call, including Dave, and David, we'll introduce David in a couple of minutes, that I've been telling clients to just go and listen to an episode. Like if they're experiencing something that pertains to one of the episodes, it's like, go take a listen on your own time. Because they can get a lot out of it without having to sit in my office. So I am very happy to be continuing to record because it seems like it's helping others out there.
Absolutely. So that's what this episode is going to be all about. And I don't think we could do this episode without including our dear friend, David Matta, who's actually been in the background editing all of our episodes from day one. So David is a producer, an owner of his own recording studio. He's also in a band, well, maybe multiple bands, but the one that I've been listening to, the Rubber Tire Peep Show, is awesome. And so we just wanted to bring him on and provide some insight in terms of what it's been like to edit the podcasts. And we're going to reflect today a bit about like what it's been like for us, because we are not professional podcasters. We did not go to school for this. So I said at the beginning, we've been building this plane as we're flying it, and I think it's flying now. So maybe we can sit back and have a coffee and talk about where this plane is going and what it's been like kind of building it. So welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, guys. It almost feels like I'm like, if you've watched like The Tonight Show like 100 times, and then you go to a live taping and like there's the hosts like doing the intro in person. It's so funny to now be hearing this intro live.
Yeah, because you would have heard the intro a number of times, but
about
never
25. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're like 24, 25 episodes in, and I think, as Dave said, we were building this plane as we're flying, and even though we're flying, I still feel like we're just flying a little Cessna, nothing like a 747 type of thing, but we're cruising along at low altitude, but having a lot of fun, just leisurely flying around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I don't even know where to start. So this is like probably our most unscripted version of this podcast, right? And this might not connect with a lot of people, but if you're interested in this, just behind the scenes, again, a couple psychologists and audio editor coming together, trying to share some information that could help people out and make a difference in the world. I've definitely been impressed with a lot of the feedback that I've had, and I want to touch on some of that because actually this whole episode might just be a big thank you to, the people that have taken the time to share some feedback. And David, like from the beginning, people won't know this, but when a couple psychologists get together, they're trying to figure out a title for their podcast. It can be about like 25 words long and sound like the title of a journal article. And then David comes in, listens to a couple episodes, and is like, how about just taking care? You guys mentioned that at the end of your podcast. What about that? And
yeah.
So maybe tell us a bit about that. What was it like? Just, we didn't ask for this. This has been like an extra bonus that you've been able to contribute and give us feedback that has helped kind of, I think, improve the show overall.
It's been a lot of fun working on the podcast. And maybe for some backstory, one of my really old friends who works at Andrew's clinic put the two of us in touch when you guys had the idea to start a podcast. And I was initially a little bit nervous because it had been a while since I had started working on a podcast from scratch. And, sometimes it's hard to like communicate ideas, or sometimes, the ideas that like you have might not resonate with, yourselves, the host or whatever. But I think we got along really well. And I think this podcast comes from such like a good place, and it comes from such a place of like passion for the two of you. And that's something that I've really appreciated, because you're just so passionate about all of these subjects, and it's been super eye-opening for me and just incredible to listen to. And I think that's what basically makes this podcast a pretty big success in my mind. And it makes it easy to edit once we understood the tone of the podcast, like the music, like what was the style of music going to be, and how often was that going to come in. And I think all the little bits, like starting every episode with the good morning and talking about, like Friday and everything, everyone's just so happy. And yeah, like you said, Dave, like you guys were signing off the episodes just saying like, take good care. And to me, that was like, oh, well, that's like an awesome little reminder. Like, and so that's where the suggestion for the title came. I think there was a podcast already called Take Good Care, so we called it Taking Good Care. And I actually think I like Taking Good Care better.
I think at this point, it's gotten to the point where it resonates with the rest of us taking good care. But yeah, going back to even the title, like Dave and I had a whole list of titles for the podcast. And I don't
Psych
think
and Wellness Podcast.
Yeah, Psych and Wellness.
That's what it's still called in my folder, actually.
But none of them, like we didn't love any of them. And then you, David, you come along in your email and it's like, guys, why don't you just call it Take Good Care? And it's like, oh, there we go. Like that. So we needed someone creative. We needed someone creative to hear that and give us an idea.
Yeah, and it's 6 months in, and I did not know that, right? Like we do a lot of communication through email, and we'll share ideas that way. But where these ideas come from, and where this is so neat today, just to kind of hear, even for us, like some of the backstory or some of the background thoughts that were going on when these things were happening. So
yeah. So the other piece too, David, I've always been very interested. Like your background is not in psychology, it's in music, it's in audio engineering. And so when you listen to these episodes for the first time and even just clicking open the file and go, oh, this is the topic for this week. I'm just wondering, like, what sort of rolls through your brain as you're listening to it, or as you're seeing what the topic is. Like, we've had some pretty different topics, I would say, when it comes to like even psychedelics, for example. It's not often you go walk down the street and you hear people talking about psychedelics or divorce and separation, or going for psychiatry help. So, like all these things now that you're listening to, like what is that like?
I think it's quite interesting, and a lot of the topics are kind of broadly they're words and phrases that we know in our society today. So, for example, like learning about mindfulness. Of course, I've heard about mindfulness. I've practiced it a little bit when I've done some of my own therapy. But yeah, therapy with psychedelics, that was a shock to me. I was like, we're going to be talking about what today? This is so interesting. And it's really, really easy to get into these topics because you guys both provide a really good base like level, and you're always keeping the listener in mind and giving context and maybe giving like your own personal like histories with the topics and such. But the thing that really draws me in is like I said before, just like how passionate you both are about it. And some friends have asked me like, oh, like, how's that podcast? Like, is it like boring? Is it interesting? I was like, no, it's really interesting. And it's really cool. Like, I didn't know that people could be so passionate about something that wasn't music, that wasn't art, right? Because how heated and how passionate you guys get talking about this stuff. Like, that's the conversations that I have with my friends, or I've had with like my brother and my cousins growing up, and we were all getting interested in music. And you talk so heatedly and so passionately, and there's such like a depth, and I think I've also similarly experienced that with, movies, talking about movies with friends and stuff. But
Sure.
I come from an artistic background, obviously, and lots of my friends do as well. But I was like, wow, like there's so much like energy and passion and interest in what you guys are talking about here and in all these topics. And it's really quite infectious. And it does make it easy to follow and like easy to learn.
Well, and in a lot of ways, David, you've been like the beacon because you're the target audience. I'm like,
Mhm.
man, he's a regular dude, right? He's not a psych nerd like us. Like we get excited about things that maybe other people don't get excited about, right? And so
Exactly.
when we hear your comments or things that like stood out for you in terms of an episode, or even just saying like, I found that really interesting. I'm like, oh, awesome. Like someone
Mhm.
else from the general dude population, appreciates this too. And I'm like, okay, that's the mission, right? The mission isn't for, sharing ideas with other psychologists. This is for like, could this help the
Mhm.
world in some way? And could people relate to these kind of complicated or fancy termed concepts and just improve their day-to-day life, or just find it interesting and maybe share it with someone else that it could help them. And so yeah, I've really appreciated anytime you've made comments on an edit, and I've just taken that to heart and been like, okay, even if 10 other people don't appreciate it like you did, and that matters.
Mhm.
So that's been really cool.
Well, it's so fun to be excited about learning something, and I think the two of you bring the energy every time you have a guest. And you're always like, oh, I got to be mindful of the time. And oh, I've got 1,000 other questions to ask. And the listeners like wouldn't know, but I'm like always cutting out one of you guys like asking a question before another person because there's just so much excitement. And it's honestly is like the best environment to learn from. And so I always look forward to editing these episodes. I think this is my favorite podcast that I've probably edited. I hope no one else is listening to this.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that.
But it just is, like I love it when people are excited about things. And in my background, that's usually been different types of music or different types of art or whatever. But I'm learning so much, right? And it's kind of, there's a demystifying element to some things as well. I think that in the past, I've done therapy a couple times and I haven't found it super impactful, super useful. It was kind of like, okay, talk through something. And then they're like, well, you should just journal and do mindfulness. And I'm like, well, okay, cool. Like I can do that. It's cool to then be able to like demystify some of these things and understand kind of the background of where you guys are coming from or where other psychologists are coming from, but also like it's like arming myself with just more knowledge. And like you said off the top of the episode, Andrew, you're able to now like tell clients, go listen to the podcast. Like I think you might learn something that could be really useful. And there's definitely no end when it comes to learning.
Yeah, I was just thinking by the end of the year, you should get a psych degree for listening to all these episodes.
At least a minor.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You can practice on all your friends.
And if nothing else, you have some hopefully just general pop quiz knowledge now of psychology stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
I think going back to what Dave was saying, for me, I do really value any kind of feedback that we get through email from you, whether it was an episode that you really enjoyed or really resonated with you, or even I remember at the beginning, guys maybe try to reorganize this or try to stay a little bit more on track in terms of where you guys are taking certain topics.
Oh,
So
yeah. But you guys have improved so much. I haven't rearranged anything in a really long time, like probably since those first 3 episodes. And I remember those first few episodes, there was a little bit more, there were a few more tangents and some parts where I was like, I don't know if this necessarily pertains to the topic at large, but then it completely stopped. I guess I'm curious to just pitch a question to you guys. Like, how did it feel starting this and like coming on these calls or hearing yourselves back? And at what point did it start to feel like really easy or natural?
Dave, you want to go first?
Sure. It's still not natural, right? Like I'm still sweating a bit just having this fun conversation. But reflecting back, I think, knowing that they weren't being released was nice to just ease our way into it and fumble around and just start recording, knowing that it's not going to be put out in the world and we're going to get, people telling us about it right away, and maybe not even ever releasing it. Like I didn't have any, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, right? And what has been nice, like even just like you said, reflecting back to the beginning, we would send you the episodes or you were editing the episodes that were recorded. And I'd be like looking at how much, like the episode was say an hour and 10 minutes and it was cut down to 40 minutes. And I'd be like, oh man, like we wasted a lot of time, or like there was a lot of useless part of the recording. And for, like you're saying, David, about like, now there's less of that, right? And so I think we've kind of grown and fine-tuned it as we're going along. And that's been kind of the, going back and forth between the editing process and then recording new sessions and then editing. And at least that's for me. It's not so much gotten easier in a way, but like more comfortable and trusting that we know what we're doing to some degree, where at the beginning I didn't think that was really the case, right? So
Yeah, no, it was definitely awkward having to listen to ourselves at the beginning. I think I can speak for Dave on that one. I think it was a little daunting to click play and be like, oh, there's my voice. I don't like that. But definitely as, 24, 25 episodes have come along, way more comfortable listening to ourselves. And now it's not even so much critiquing about, oh, the tone or the voice. I still do some critiquing of when I say, or if I'm repeating myself a little bit, or thank you for cleaning up all the throat clears, David. That's something I'm trying to stop as well. But yeah, it's more so that. And then I think for me, bringing guests on helped a lot, because now it was like, okay, we are professionals in a sense, in the sense that, okay, we're going to put a product out there and we're going to be representing somebody else. And so for me, it's like, okay, let's keep it really clean. Let's ask hopefully good questions. And this is one thing that Dave and I have noticed, is that I'm often the one asking the question when it comes to extending the conversation, perhaps. And Dave is the one who's much more reflective, self-reflective, bringing on his own experience. David's nodding. He's like, he hears all of this. And so Dave will bring on his own experience and reflecting about that. And that also helps the guest extend the conversation. So two different styles, which I think we've complemented each other quite nicely there. So even when you listen to those with the guests, David, you were nodding there. Is that what you noticed as well?
I think I've definitely noticed that. I love that you guys just immediately went into having guests, like quite soon into it. I think maybe it was, I'm now looking at my notes, episode 8. We had Kendall on. I think it's a lot of fun to have a guest on, and you guys get so excited. And I think that just comes through, and it's the best, because I've edited a lot of podcasts where everyone wants like every single and stutter edited and gone. And I take out a good amount of that. But the more that I listen to other podcasts, like ones that I listen to just for leisure, like they're just fun. And most of the time, the biggest podcasts are just completely unedited. And I think that listeners are used to, or us as human beings are used to, just hearing all of these conversational tics, like the ums and the stutters and all of the imperfections in conversation and human conversation. And when you remove all of that, it gets hard to listen to and hard to focus on. And so I think that's where the episodes with the guests probably even like you were saying, Andrew, probably helps in improving your podcast host abilities, because it becomes more like just fun and conversational and light, and all of that gets to stay in there. And I think that's part of what translates the energy of the conversation to listeners through an audio medium, where you're not being able to watch the expressions and the hand gestures of everyone.
Yeah, totally. That actually reminds me, because there'd be times where I would go back and forth with Andrew about, should we ask for more editing? Should we get more of that cut out? Because I don't like hearing myself kind of making those fumbles and stumbles. And then it's like, no, I think that's kind of our brand. Like, I think
those are the breaths in the conversation. Without that, it's exhausting. It's like if you're just listening to just words, information. Like you need the little pauses and the breaks between speakers and the ums and everything. I think we don't hear those when we're listening to podcasts, but you feel them. You feel those like cadences of human conversation.
I think you bring up a really good point, David, is like giving listeners, just like you would in a natural conversation, like a
Mhm.
natural conversation will have ums and stutters here and there, but it gives the brain time to process that information. Otherwise, it's like sitting in a 3 hour lecture of
Yeah.
just complete download of information, and you don't even have time to take a mental breath.
And
Yeah.
another thing that I think is so fun is that with all the guests, and you guys are all psychologists, you're all really active listeners. And, I don't know if they teach you this in school, but there's always a lot of, like just like silent agreement. I'm like, that must be just simply part of like having to have these really in-depth and detailed conversations with people as your job, like all day, every day. And it's fun to sometimes leave those in there because that's again like the character of like the way that I guess you say all psychologists talk a little bit.
So musicians don't do that when they're chatting with each other?
Not as much. But okay, this is just my own assumption, but I guess that comes from wanting to make sure the client knows that you're like engaged and listening.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious, but
Maybe after doing this for so many years, it's sort of subconscious at this point. I also
Mhm.
too wonder if that occurs. Two reasons why. Dave and I might be thinking, okay, who's going to say the next thing? And so there's a little bit of that, but also sometimes there are so many different directions we can go with a certain topic. And
Mhm.
so it's like trying to figure out, okay, do I want to go in this direction or that direction? And I just need like 2 seconds to figure this out,
Right.
which way I want to go. So it's like, interesting. All right, let's think for 2 seconds and go.
Well, even the guests do it, right? As you guys are
Ah,
talking,
okay.
they'll be like, yeah, yeah, like so much verbal agreement. And I think that's so sweet. But I do
Again,
cut some of it out.
yeah, absolutely. I think you should. But it is like, for those that don't know, like this, we basically record and we edit and we release. Like sometimes we've had comments about people asking, like, well, how many times did you practice this? Or how many times did you do the interview? And it's like, one. Like we don't,
Mhm.
like it is very
Yeah,
organic and very unscripted. Like we have a
yeah.
couple questions and we have a bio and we know the person generally that we're so far our guests, like we know them quite well. But this is not, yeah, we're not creating, I don't know, a lecture like you were saying, or like this is, we're having a conversation and hopefully people find this interesting. And actually, I'll say this right now, like I was blown away. Andrew had mentioned a little while ago that we hit like 1,000 downloads and we qualified. So for those that are
Really? That's
listeners regularly,
amazing.
yeah.
We're at 2000 now. We're at 2000.
Okay, we're at
Wow.
We're
2,000.
at 2000 downloads.
But I think it was the 1,000 that qualified us to do like some advertisement stuff. So the
Yeah.
listeners that are, not into, like, it is a free resource, but now there is some advertising, not that it pays the bills or anything, but
No,
it is
not
like
even
a
close.
IHOP has not like recruited us to do a ton of advertising, but I think it was just like a milestone. It was like, oh, well, this is a cool thing, like that other people are actually downloading this, and now we're at a place where we could qualify for advertisements. Like,
Yeah.
that's really neat.
And I should add too, I don't know, David, I don't know if I ever told you this, but Dave knows. We're actually listened to in every continent minus Antarctica.
Wow.
So it's primarily North America, Europe, but definitely been getting hits in Australia, Asia, so Asia, like Southeast Asia, South Asia, East Asia, and a couple of hits in Africa too. So it's
That's
been pretty
amazing.
cool that way. Yeah, South America, a couple of hits as well, and then a bunch in Mexico and the Caribbean. So yeah, lots of fun, and I'm just hoping listeners get something out of this, given the reach that we've been able to get to.
Have you had any emails or people reach out to you about the podcast, like people you didn't know, or like any cool stories like that way?
Andrew,
I was gonna
yeah.
say we have had one comment through Spotify. We've got one comment through Apple. That's probably where we can continue improving is hopefully get some audience engagement. We'll get so the comments have been, very generous and appreciative. And then the other one was like, "Oh, really, really enjoyed this particular talk. You have to get this guest back on to talk about this thing that they alluded to." Yeah, and we've gotten, the stars and the follows, so that's been nice. But definitely would love more audience engagement, whether it's questions for us or ideas for future episodes that someone might want to know more about. But I think Dave's probably got some more anecdotal because he's way more famous in Edmonton than I am here in Toronto. I'm like a small fry here in Toronto.
Well, famous is yeah. Andrew sometimes jokes that like half our listeners is my extended family. So, I have been honestly, my heart has been filled many times, whether it's like my brothers reaching out to me or family has made comments or clients have made comments. So those don't always show up in like the ratings or the Spotify stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
But it has been like, yeah, surprisingly, really just like fills my heart. And I still remember like when we were recording and we weren't releasing anything yet. And I'd be excited on like Friday morning, like making my coffee and feeding the kids breakfast. And my wife is like, "Why are you so happy?" And I'm like, I felt like I had this like the secret kind of thing that I was working on that I loved, but I didn't want to tell too many people about it, right? Like I didn't want to get too excited about it. But man, it was like really pumped me up a lot of times. And it still is like that. Like I still, even this morning, I'm just like, yeah, it's recording day. Like I am looking forward to this. So,
Mhm.
based on the comments from others and then the internal feeling that I have doing this is just been like super cool.
For you, David, like again, going back to like being the first listener of these topics and not having the psychology background, is there anything that has really stood out to you with respect to even understanding psychology, even in a broader sense, and what we do, or, it extends beyond therapy. Like there's all these sort of subsections of psychology, perhaps. Like, is there anything that you've been able to sort of learn along the way about our field?
I think I've gotten a good broader sense of maybe like your day to day, which I find kind of interesting. Was it the first episode that was just kind of like a what is therapy? And you
Yeah.
guys kind of gave like a broad view, but I'll still say I'm still a little bit confused. And CBT gets brought up now and again. I think I understand. So there's different, maybe you guys can explain to me now, even there's different like schools of ways of doing it. But is CBT kind of just like your typical, like what I would maybe call like a typical go in kind of talk therapy sort of thing? Or is that like a school within that?
Yeah, it's more of a school of a type of therapy that
Mm-hmm.
really gained traction, I would say probably late 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s. There was just so much research put upon CBT into its effectiveness and its efficacy
Mm-hmm.
with clients that I would say it really became popular because even medicine started to talk about CBT, and everywhere you go, it's like, oh, this person needs CBT. But it's really just one modality of therapy. And I think, as Dave and I might have touched on this before, it doesn't work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
CBT is trying to think of alternative ways to think about certain situations. And if you can change your thought about it, you'll change your feeling. And if you can change
Right.
that, then you'll change your subsequent behavior. But not everybody actually utilizes it well. So I'll let Dave take it from there. What's
Well, I just love the question. I think this
yeah.
is a future episode. Like, this is confusing for the general population all the time. Like, I'm going to counseling, right? And it's like, oh, what do you mean? There's like 1,000 different ways that counseling can look. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make sense. I'm going to talk to someone, right? Like, so these theoretical orientations of what we're trained in and different approaches, it's basically like, what gets focused on in the session? What is the counselor focusing on? What are the quote unquote interventions that are being done? Like, what is going to change to lead to some change? And so there's like, I think a lot of these interventions or theoretical orientations, this is my own personal belief. It's just, it's repackaged and it's promoted as this like new thing. And sometimes there's new elements to it, but a lot of them involve the same common kind of factors or the same common elements that Andrew was talking about, like your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, right?
Mhm.
And we need to do a better job of explaining this so that people can actually find what they're looking for or gravitate towards maybe a type of therapy. And I think as we get more guests on that specialize in different types of therapy, that might become more clear. But I really appreciate you just sharing that right now in terms of like, it's still not clear. I've been listening to these episodes and it's not super clear. And I bet you're not alone. Like, this is not
Well, you don't talk about it every episode, so that's why. But there have been some episodes that have been super demystifying. And I guess maybe I can explain like something that from a few weeks ago in the episode of Chronic Pain, I sent you guys an email and I was talking about like, wow, like I really resonated with some of the stuff that you were talking about because it was 5 years ago now. I was rear-ended by someone like really, really aggressively, and I had like big concussion and whiplash and everything. And I was dealing with that for a long time. And I mean, you deal with a lot of things when that comes to an accident like that, like insurance companies and all sorts of things that are just exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I went to a bunch of different physiotherapists, and I think the first one I was with, helped a good amount. And then I moved to the city and I saw some others that were I was just like, what is happening here? Like, this is not helping whatsoever. And then I went to one final one and I kid you not, I think 2 appointments, and it helped me more than anyone. And really what that physiotherapist did was explain to me why my neck was still tense. And he said, your body is just the reason that this is still being perpetuated in your body is that it's this fight or flight thing that's happening. And so even when you come into a tiny bit of stress or strain, like your body is remembering that feeling and tensing up. And then mentally, I was just kind of able to go, oh, okay. So like, I can just mentally kind of undo that a little bit. Anytime that like I feel that coming on, or I feel tensed up, or like I'm being moved around, or I get hit by something, it's just like, oh, actually everything's fine. Like you can calm down, to my body. And then that helped me immediately just release a lot of this tension. And then I've just been mostly fine ever since. And I thought that was so fascinating. Like someone just actually explained to me like what was happening. They really knew what they were doing. They really knew it was wrong and told me that. And I think you guys touched upon that in that chronic pain episode. And I was like, yes, like, oh my gosh, yes, like enough with like the mystery of it. And I think probably having the internet doesn't help, because if you Google something, there's 1,000 explanations when you're trying to figure something out. But I think, when maybe it's helpful for people who are seeking out like a psychologist or therapy to understand even some of these like modalities and some of these things, because it can be like, oh, okay, well, so we're going to do this. And it's just like building IKEA furniture or something. You see all of the parts laid out in front of you. And so you have a pre-understanding of how that's all going to go. And then when, someone actually helps you put that all together, then it's really easy. And yeah, that was kind of just something that I was like, really like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I really like this episode. I just agree with it, with all of this from my own experience. And it's super cool to hear that.
I think that's really cool, David. And I'm glad you brought that up, because for me, again, the value of the podcast, again, we started this with very little expectation, didn't know where it was going to reach, but who knew our editor would have episodes that resonate with him, right? And that to me means that, okay, there must be other people, within the 2,000 plus downloads now, that hopefully somebody else is listening and hearing a similar experience, that they're not out there alone. And I think that's one of the pieces that I always hear in my office is, this must be such a stupid story that I'm telling you, like nobody else probably has this problem. But believe you me, like there are a lot of people going through similar struggles. They may not be the same struggle exactly, but if individuals can hear that, hey, there are others who are struggling as well with chronic pain, with separation and divorce, with depression, anxiety, I really think that there's value in that, just to know that you're not alone in all of this.
Yeah, for me, just hearing you, David, it's like those are the comments that really make this worthwhile. And to hear, oh, that stood out for me, or that was meaningful to me. And even if it's a reminder of something that you've already learned, or if it's like, I went to my family reunion and I was like, how's this going to go? This is rural Alberta, right? We don't talk about my work a lot, right? This is not something that people gravitate to me and want to talk about psychology, right? But now I got this podcast that I put out in the world and family is listening to it. But it was really cool. Like people coming up to me and being like, that episode on this really like was my favorite episode for this reason. And I was like, oh man, like now we're having a conversation about something that we would have never. And like you said, there's information that can really help people. Like, yeah, you might go to physiotherapy for the physical part of it, but they might share some ideas with you that help explain why you have the pain or the condition that you have. And then you can do something about it for yourself, right? Like, and this is, this podcast is not to replace therapy or to replace medical advice.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about demystifying it. It makes everything so much less scary, and like it makes everything make sense, and you still obviously need to go to those like medical appointments and professionals because you don't know everything, but like just knowing what you're doing when you go into it. Maybe another analogy is when I have clients who have never recorded in a studio before, there's always a bit of a learning curve. And then when we've had 3 or 4 sessions, they're super comfortable and it's super easy and they know how everything works and everything is demystified, but you still have to come in and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe I'll make one more comment about that because, for anyone going to therapy, you should be able to ask your counselor, your therapist, your mental health person, like, can you explain what is going on for me in your words? Like, how do you see what I'm struggling with or what I'm trying to change? What is your what is your philosophy? What is your conceptualization of like, how do you make sense of what's happening for me? And then you get to check that out for yourself. Like, does that make sense for me? Because those are the pieces that are really important. We know this in the research. For people that get better from therapy, generally them and their therapist are aligned in terms of how they see the problems or how they see what they want to change, and they're working on it together.
There should be professional insight and then also personal insight. Right? So the person you're speaking to, they should understand who you are. I'm not saying like after the first 30 minutes, but at some point in time, as the story gets fleshed out, that individual should be conceptualizing, the professional should be conceptualizing, should be having some awareness and insight into the person who's sitting in front of them. And then it's sort of almost like having a light bulb sort of turn on and be like, okay, this is what I can share with you now. And to Dave's point, you should be able to ask your psychologist, therapist, hey, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And see if that aligns with your personal insight.
What do you think? And what's your plan?
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. We just like, okay, book your next session. I'll see you weekly. And they're like, God, what do you mean? Like, how many times do I have to do this? And then we're like, well, it depends. And then it's like, okay, see you later. It does depend, but there are certain considerations that you should be able to talk about. So, and again, I'm saying this as like, maybe I don't always do this enough for my clients. So a good reminder.
But I wonder if it's like going into the music studio, David, like you said, artists, musicians who are coming into your studio, maybe they've never been before and they've never recorded live. But I'm assuming it's not like, oh, we're just going to do this indefinitely until it's perfected. Like we've got X number of takes. I'm assuming that you're coming in having practiced and you have a goal, you have a mission in the studio.
Yeah, for sure. Both of those things are super true. Hopefully, there's some level of preparation and yeah, you do have only a finite amount of time usually, and resources are limited, but that's where that learning curve comes in, is it can be tricky to perform or get a good performance or understand, okay, wait, what do you mean? Okay, so we can do this thing, like we don't have to do it all live, like we can do it in parts, like not understanding maybe how it works. And then once that's all demystified, it becomes easier. And I think, yeah, that's what I was just tying together with, like, basically me, like, being able to listen to like every episode of this podcast and learn so much. I know that the next time that I go in for therapy or anything, it'll feel so much less scary, and I'll feel so much more kind of like armed and ready to like engage with like the work, I guess.
Awesome. I'm gonna ask a pretty candid question, David. From your perspective, where can we still improve?
I don't know that I even had something in mind coming into this recording.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Where can
You need to go into your file that's on your computer. That's like, what are the common errors or mistakes that these guys keep making? But no, I'm joking. Like anything that comes to mind, I think the more feedback we get, the better we can get at this thing. So I think, like Andrew said, we're kind of missing that right now. We miss the feedback.
A bit of the feedback, right? Yeah, because after a while it gets comfortable.
It gets comfortable, and I think also like at the beginning of our recordings, at one point, like Dave said, we were thinking, oh, do we ask David to edit this a little bit more or not? And then Dave had a really cool comment, and he's just like, you know what? We're just two regular guys recording a podcast. We can show our flaws. It makes us human. Obviously, like as long as the flaws aren't like gigantic, but like from now and again, like if there are some things where it seems like we're thinking a little bit longer, or there's a couple more stutters here and there, like whatever. So that's why it's like, okay, we can get comfortable with that. But I do wonder, like, even as you're listening, it's like, oh man, they keep making that same error, or I keep having to scrub that part. So I'm just wondering, and again, I know I'm putting you on the spot, a sort of random question, but I just thought, out of a bit of fun, is there anything that you've noticed that it's like, okay, you guys have to keep this to a minimum, or keep that to a minimum, or do more of that?
Well, as I kind of mentioned before, I've definitely noticed you guys improve so much in terms of even nerves and speaking more succinctly, more clearly about ideas. And I think that's awesome. And even some of the filler words, they go down a lot, or they have gone down a lot. Like I'm cutting out a lot less and different things like that. And so I think that I don't know that I have even a note for improvement. I have things that I love about the podcast and things that I enjoy. I really enjoy the camaraderie. I love that there's such a sense of history between you two, but also the guests. Like I love that the guests are all like old friends and colleagues, and that just makes it so much more fun, because it could just be someone that you don't really know, and then there's a bit of awkwardness, but it's like, oh no, now I feel like I'm just like going and getting coffee with these old friends, and they're just like hanging out. And so I think that's where I also tend to, in the editing, just leave some of that stuff in, because I just think it just flows and it just works, and it's disarming and it's charming and all those things.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're making us blush.
Maybe one day we can redo the intro, now that you guys are so much more comfortable sitting in front of a microphone, and you had to record that so long ago. But
that's a good point.
That's kind of the only thing. I mean, we've made some changes to the structure of the podcast, like leaving a little musical break in just to, gather and collect your thoughts. We did that really cool thing in the mindfulness episode where we just had like mindfulness music kind of in the background, and we really took our time with that. And I remember that was funny because I was cutting some of those gaps, as I was like, I don't know, do they want it to be like fully? And then you guys were like, no, add in 30 seconds of silence here and all that. And that was something I'd never done in a podcast. I thought that was awesome. So,
the music's been great. My wife actually, she appreciates the little break in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's super, super handy just from a conversational point of view. And it also, that way you just have a quick second to either pause. You're like, okay, now I know that I can pause this and resume it later. Or I can just stop and think about like, oh, what I just heard.
And again, this has been your brilliance. Like we did not ask for this.
No, we didn't ask for any of this.
I'm just coming up with it as we go.
Yeah, and it's your music too, right? Like the intro and stuff, right?
It's not something that I made, but it's something that I licensed for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, David, again, really appreciate everything that you've taught us about producing a podcast and making a podcast digestible, making it attractive with the music. And it's nothing that we asked for, but you, based on your experience, you put it in there. And I am sure that helps us get listeners. So thank you so much.
Of course, if I may contribute to the final reflection, like where do you guys like hope to take this podcast in the future? Or is there something that you're super excited to do or talk about
This
coming
is
up?
awesome. David's already caught on to our final reflection.
Oh man, I was gonna throw it to him. Like, what episodes does he want to hear? And now he threw it on us. So I wasn't ready for this at all.
Where do That's a great question. I think for now it's continuing to get interesting guests to come on. And I think there's so many really good mental health professionals, psychologists, therapists. We had Yanushka on, who is an ABA therapist. But there are so many good people out there that I think their work goes underappreciated. And that's why I really like having the people who we have. They're not super popular individuals on YouTube. We're not trying to get the person who you need to pay, thousands of dollars to be on a podcast. No, these are just regular practitioners who are just really good at what they do. And we do have some on tap, but this is like connecting with old friends, old supervisors, old professors, who are just really good at what they do. And I think just highlighting the type of work that they do and the diversity in the field.
Man, this is like I so, there's this old philosophy of like, are people generally good or generally bad? And we can debate this back and forth. This connects me to the goodness in humanity. Like, even doing this today, I'm like, man, I didn't know David in Toronto, but now we've connected and like, this is amazing. And so, even the guests that we've invited,
Yeah.
that we send them the podcast and we say, listen to it, see if you'd want to be a guest. And we've had a really good success rate. Like there's a lot of people that are willing to give their time to share some of what they do and possibly make a difference in the world in a positive way. Like there's so much crap out there right now. Like I just feel like this renews my sense of humanity and it possibly can lead to some like collective healing and some positive change in the world. I don't know, maybe that's my big grand plan, but like it just feels like I'm doing a part that I'm so grateful that Andrew, you approached me with this and that I get to do this. And David, I'm grateful that we found you and that you've like helped make this better. And I think moving forward, I want this to keep being fun. I don't want this to feel like a lot of work and like we're trying to talk about things that we're actually not that interested in. If it gets to that point, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way, Dave. It feels like I'm contributing something just by helping you guys make this podcast, that I'm contributing some sort of extra goodness, maybe somewhere, and maybe somewhere someday this will help someone. And I think that's super cool. And I just like being a part of that.
Well, I think as an exemplar, even just this morning, I woke up, checked my email, and there's an email from a client who said, I suggested maybe listening to the psychiatry episode.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this client said, "Oh yeah, I know about your podcast. I've been listening to some of the other episodes. I'll definitely check out this one." It's like, oh, okay. People don't have to tell us that they've been listening, but they are. And if they find it, whether it's entertaining, helpful, then I feel like our job is done, right? If it helps you, it helps your world, then I'm really happy to contribute to that.
I know we're getting close to the end and mindful of time, but Andrew, maybe David too, but Andrew for sure. Do you have any regrets? Anything that you would have done differently starting over?
No, I mean, I was thinking a little bit about this even during our conversation today. Could we have done this earlier in our careers? I came to the conclusion probably not. I think it's really based on experience. We've been practicing for so many years now, over a decade easily, each of us. But it's that collective knowledge and experience that I think actually makes this podcast so easy, because it really, I think, shows our experience and we can just talk to it now. right? We're not spending hours and hours researching for the podcast episodes. We tell our guests, come on and speak about what you're good at, what you're interested in, what's your passion. I think that's what we do too. Like we'll brainstorm ideas and it's like, don't know too much about that. Let's bring a guest on. Oh yeah, lots of experience in that area. Let's talk about it.
Mhm.
Right. So I think, starting when we did was really good. And I think also for me, it's just not really knowing where this was going to go. So not having grand expectations that this was going to blow up worldwide or whatever. I still don't have that expectation. But I think that's what's really helped. It's just really easygoing. And, Dave, you and I have always gotten along. So that made it easy too. So yeah, how about you, Dave? Any regrets? And then we'll get to David too.
Okay. You know what? I do have one, and I wanted to make sure to say this before the end of this episode because we have now reached out and connected and had guests from our cohort, right?
Yeah,
We've had
yeah.
Kendall, we've had Janice, and we've had Holly, and we're missing one.
Yes, I know where this is
And
going.
one that we could never have. So after our grief episode that we recorded, we lost one of our cohorts. We got a
Yes.
message from her husband. She's practicing in BC. She had moved back to BC. Some young kids, and she lost her battle with cancer. And that's my one regret is like, oh man, if we could have started a little earlier or we could have had her on as a guest. There's still this like pit in my stomach, this like sore spot in my throat that I'm like, it would have been so nice because she was an amazing person and loved doing the work, like doing her practice. Like I talked to her a couple of months, I think 6 months before she passed, and she still was passionate about doing therapy and being a psychologist. And so we didn't really know how short of a time she
Yeah.
actually had. We were all quite surprised. So yeah, the one regret just that we would have reached out maybe sooner and possibly had that one piece that we'll never be able to have. So
And I remember messaging you. It was after we recorded. It hadn't been released yet, but we had recorded our grief episode. And I remember messaging you. It's like, oh man, talk about grief. When we
I'm
got
so
that
sorry,
news.
guys.
Yeah.
yeah. So as much as like I'm celebrating this, I'm also grieving a bit. And I think that was in the grief episode, right? Like we live and we grieve at the same time. So every time we're doing the podcast and it's cool to bring on guests and be excited about it, it's like, So for Kiara Papile, like her family, her kids, if you ever listen to this, like she was a big part of like our cohort and our learning together, and she's deeply missed. So
Yes. All right. And on that note,
maybe on a lighter note for David, any regrets?
any regrets or final thoughts?
I don't have any regrets because I've just been kind of like on this journey and figuring out how it goes. But I will say I'm just excited to keep it going, and I'm excited to hear how what different topics that you guys come up with and different guests. Maybe something that I'd be interested in would be like diverting a little bit away from like, like just like kind of here's a new topic every week. Like if we did like 3 or 4 episodes focused on one thing, and then like that could be a resource for you guys to like give to your clients. That could be super cool. Like if we got like just really detailed into something, that could be kind of cool. And it's just like a little bit of like an audio textbook-ish thing. I don't know, maybe just like a learning resource. And I think that'd be really fun to put together.
It'd be like an audio book without the book.
Yeah, just from a creative point of view, where if we just got into one topic for like 2 or 3 episodes, and it's like we were talking about like the CBD, or maybe we could talk about those modalities or something. That'd be really cool or really interesting, and just like finding different ways to explore the medium while still like having fun and like producing a really cool resource for people.
All right, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
we'll have to talk offline a little bit more.
We'll have to talk offline, but
I thought your regret was going to be that you should have charged more for this when you sent us like your estimate of what it would cost to do this.
No,
thing. So
absolutely not.
No, but that's great feedback though, because we have talked about it. Like we do have a second ADHD episode coming.
Mhm.
But to your point, David, like maybe we could have done it sooner rather than wait a whole bunch of episodes before releasing the second part of the ADHD episode, right? So
Right.
if we go a little bit more in depth, maybe two, three episodes on one topic, and like you said, it can actually become sort of a standalone resource.
Yeah, and they could
Um,
be like kind of set apart
yeah.
with a different title, and you could be like, "Hey, like go check out this thing." And we talk about this topic. We have a guest come on for this topic, and
Okay.
I just maybe I think I just came from a place of like, yeah, really enjoying like working in the sort of audio format and wanting to be creative a little bit
Cool.
and have more fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's think
I'm all
about
about
that.
that.
Let's think about that. All right, David, thank you again so much for all the work that you do for us, giving us your insight today, being someone who's not in psychology, but listening to all the stuff we talk about. Like I said, you can get a degree in psychology after all of this, and we just really appreciate the work and the help that you provided us. So you can find David at davidmattasound.com. That's DAVIDMATTA sound.com. And it's been such a fun journey, David. Thank you for riding along with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks for steering the ship a lot of times. So
And this, I don't know if I mentioned, this is the first time I've ever been a guest on a podcast.
well, look out. The request might be coming your way. So
Although
Fantastic.
you do perform a lot. So this was, I hope this was easy.
It was.
yeah,
It was fun.
I was mentioning at the beginning, I was jamming out to some of David's music. You can find him on, like on YouTube, the Rubber Tire Peep Show. I love it. It's like kind of a country. I don't even know how you would describe it, but it got me moving this morning. And I was like, this is a good start to my day. So check it out on Spotify or YouTube or anywhere that you get your music. So yeah. All right.
Thanks,
take good care.
Take good care, guys.
Take care.